One of the worst, biggest, greatest aspects of the fallout of a narcissistic relationship is feeling that we are part of the problem just because we're a part of it. This is why so many people who have been in narcissistic relationships or are from narcissistic families, and frankly even friend groups or workplaces, but this is particularly true in close relationships like families and intimate relationships. That's why so many of you feel like you're narcissistic and like you're the problem. We assimilate to these systems. We completely almost give in to them. We make uncomfortable accommodations. We learn unhealthy patterns. The one thing that everyone does in a narcissistic system, especially families, but again, it seems to happen in all of them, is they lie. Not just the narcissistic person or people, but everyone. And so let's break that down. The narcissistic, antagonistic, manipulative, toxic person, whatever, is going to lie. That's built into the personality style. It's one of the qualifiers, right? Being deceitful, warping the truth, denying reality. The foundation of a narcissistic system is built on lies. Narcissistic people lie so that they can look good to the world, to hide the bad things they do, to maintain a version of reality that works for them, to maintain power over others because they feel entitled to get away with stuff, but also know what looks right or good to the world, so they lie so they can get away with it. The delusional reality of the narcissistic system is that they are perfect and special, and lies will be told so they can maintain the status quo and maintain this delusion of their ultra specialness and perfection. Lies come somewhat naturally to a narcissistic person. They lie well because they lie often and they feel entitled to get the thing that the lie gets them. Now, they don't lie the way a psychopathic person lies. Psychopathic folks with their down-regulated autonomic nervous systems, they don't break a sweat at all. They are built to lie. Narcissistic people do have enough guilt that if you could learn their tells, eye contact, body movements, you will start to learn over time what the patterns are when they do lie. Because ultimately, the looking good piece and feeling entitled to what they want tends to be what wins the day for them. But even if you detect it, it doesn't matter. They will gaslight you if you call them out on the lie. You know the drill. So there's no really addressing that pattern. But let's go back to what this video is about. Everyone lies. I think almost everyone has to lie when they're in a narcissistic system that they cannot escape. Everyone. And that means you, me, all of us. And that is what messes with our heads, because it doesn't feel good to lie. We may not be liars by nature, but we'll often do it in these systems. And most of it is sheer survivalism. Once upon a time, as a kid, you may very well have tried to get your needs met or communicated by walking right through the front door and asking for something directly. Like I said, this is less so, if you were a kid to walk in there and ask for your need, but certainly in an adult relationship. And if you did do that with a narcissistic person, you'd be met with anger and basically being cut down and being called bad or greedy or selfish or whatever. So you learn the back doors, the ways of asking for something that the narcissistic person would agree to. The not telling the truth about why you can't go to something they want you to go to. You can't tell them the truth that you don't want to, or about where you are, or about what you're working on. You may feel you aren't lying, but maybe you think you're being manipulative, fluffing the narcissistic person up when you have to share something difficult, or asking someone else you know that the narcissistic person will listen to be the one to ask them whatever needs to be asked. So now you're having to triangulate too. And all of this feels icky and deceitful and not who you are. I know many a person who has the proverbial coffee can story, who had dire financial needs in a narcissistic relationship that they knew would never be met. And so they would maybe get some money or ask for some money related to the household. And through clever budgeting and using coupons and discounts and all the rest of it, would be able to make, for example, the grocery purchase come in about $20 cheaper, and painstakingly save those little bits and pieces of money that they would save to ultimately make those purchases. I saw that happen throughout my own family system. Years and years of scraps of cash skimmed off the top so a family member could help other family members that the narcissistic family member would never allow to happen. Is that deceit to put that $20 away in the coffee can? That's for you to decide. In a narcissistic relationship, you may not be doing anything wrong, but the narcissistic person's tendency to criticize your friends or people that you just merely enjoy spending time with, or your colleagues, or even their control over your schedule, may mean that you lie about whom you are with. You don't tell them that you're spending time with your friend having a cup of coffee because you don't want to hear it and hear the criticisms. Or you tell them that you're going out of town with a friend that the narcissistic partner likes, who is also willing to be the alibi. So you could go check in on a struggling family member that your narcissistic partner would throw a tantrum about if they knew you were helping them. That's how twisted this gets. You may lie about working late so you could just go have some fun and go shopping with a friend. It doesn't feel good. But for many of us, it beats the hell out of one more protracted argument, one more painful example and reminder about how bad the relationship is. Sadly, when we lie about these small things, the relationship is more likely to sustain and we start feeling like the bad person because we're the ones who are not telling the truth. Over time, the entire narcissistic family system or relationship becomes an exercise in what we call subterfuge, a big spy novel. Nobody's telling the truth. And everyone is learning how to ask for one thing, which is not the thing they need to get the thing they need. Or they don't tell the truth about what they are doing, or even who they are, or coming up with alibis. You may play music in a band at night and tell them that you're off doing something playing squash or something. People who grow up like this or in relationships like this will say, I feel completely inauthentic. I feel like a fraud. I feel like I'm a big liar. And for some folks in these systems, the lies start to become more and more natural. And folks have said to me, you know, what sucks is I found myself starting to lie in places I didn't need to. Because we forget that there are healthy relationships out there where we can tell the truth. But lying, when we've been through a narcissistic system, feels almost normalized and necessary, and may even become reflexive, the only way to get a need met or to avoid their rage, whether it's silent rage or noisy rage. There are quite a few narcissistic systems that sort of look perfect to the world. Everyone looks good in pictures. Everyone's doing the things they're supposed to be doing. They hit their stride on social media and look oh so happy on their vacations. And that can come at the price of lies. External images can often lead us to think a family is working well, but it is often held together by an intricate system of lies. And those lies can sit like a brick in the psyches of the people in the system who may view themselves as inauthentic or even not know how to be in a healthy relationship. And the most prominent thing we see is shame. Lots and lots of shame. Shame for lying, shame from being part of this system, shame for coming from this system. Now, for those of you who had this going on since childhood, you had to survive in this system. So the lying for survivor, well, I don't know, maybe a philosopher would argue differently. But to me, psychological safety tends to win out. And the child will learn the tricks of the system to be able to get through life. That is what survival is. And if you choose to die on the hill of honor and always telling the truth, the emotional abuse may end up exhausting you, or worse, if you are from one of these family systems. In adult relationships, you may want the relationship to last for all the attachment and connection and the practical reasons and love reasons that are out there. But you may also find that the lying is the way to navigate this relationship. It may be small ticket stuff, lying about going to one grocery store, but then going to another because the longer drive clears your head and gives you time away from the narcissistic person or the narcissistic system. Truth, ultimately, is us showing up fully as ourselves. It is respectfully speaking what is real to us, putting words to our values, existing and presenting as our true selves. Well, all of that sounds great on paper, but it is not only impossible in all narcissistic relationships. I hate to say it, but even some not very narcissistic relationships can't tolerate this. Your truth is often another person's problem, so it may get shut down. But to survive in a narcissistic relationship, you cannot share your truth. To have even a shred of your true self while you are in a narcissistic relationship or from a narcissistic family, you have to deny who you are. And that's the biggest lie of all. Is it no wonder then that you are going to lie about how much the milk cost, or who you had lunch with, or that you took the long way home, or that you were actually not playing soccer after school? The shadowy half-truths and half-lies we find to be essential to sustain a narcissistic relationship. A pattern that can fill you with shame and leave you wondering if your behavior is just as bad as that of the narcissistic toxic people around you. It doesn't mean that your identity is that of a liar. That makes you someone attempting to do the impossible, which is to exist and get your needs met in a narcissistic system. To not be our true self in a relationship, it's the ultimate deceit. And unfortunately, since it is not possible to safely be our true selves or even develop our true selves in these relationships, we then have to take on the shameful burden of living through a series of lies. I remember so well somebody who was in a narcissistic relationship telling me that the lying was not only survival. There was an interesting twist to the lie that also I want to leave you with. It was a long-term relationship the person had had. A lot of reasons that this person didn't feel necessarily safe getting divorced. And the partner had all kinds of trackers on the car, trackers on the phones, because there was one family phone plan. So the partner always knew where this person was. And one time this person was going to run an errand, like at one of these, big box type stores, and there were several in the area they lived. And she said, I went to XYZ store, okay? And he said, no, you didn't. And she said, yeah, I did. Look at all the stuff. And she's showing the big items she'd bought. No, you didn't. You actually went to this store. And he was right. He knows because he tracked her. So she would. And I asked her, I said, so if you kind of almost knew you were going to get caught, why didn't you just tell the truth? It wasn't a high stakes issue. Why didn't you tell the truth about going to the store? And she said, I've lost all of myself in this relationship, that somehow it felt like a tiny win to say I went to a big box store, but just say I went to the other one. So sometimes the lies aren't even just about getting needs communicated. Sometimes it is not a way of just sort of sometimes it's just being your own person in this, even when you know you're going to get caught. And that for her, in a way, even though it ended up in this sort of sinister, weird, punitive thing about, no, you didn't, you went to that store. The partner ultimately let it go because it's not like she said she was going to the big box store A and ended up going to a bar. But for her in that moment, having a moment as her true self happened to be worth the lie. But it doesn't feel good, and a lot of people feel bad about it. But you have to ask yourself, what price survival in these relationships? The lying is often one of those prices. Thanks again.